All right, so when this runs, this will be SNL 50 week. This was the first SNL movie, The Blues Brothers, a movie that we've been saving for the right time. I feel like this is the right time. I love this movie. I don't know how it stands for people under 25. I know how I feel.
Yeah.
It's an OG. I saw it in Chicago in 1980.
Get the fuck out of here.
And we walked out, and Daily Plaza was there, and my head almost exploded. That is a true story. I was on a baseball park trip with my dad, and we saw Blues Brothers. And we were in that theater, and we came out, and I was just like, I was like in the Matrix.
And then a bunch of Nazis were also there.
It's like,
Carrie
they're
Fisher
putting
had a
guns at
missile
us.
launcher.
How old were you?
1980, so I was 10.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So even back then, at 10, you would already, like, were you just obsessed with Belushi?
Yeah, so the Belushi thing for me, he was like my first favorite, but it started, they used to rerun the SNLs in prime time.
Yeah.
So I think it was season 4, and that's when I started seeing it because I wasn't allowed to stay up late. And then I think somewhere around there I started watching a little bit, but Belushi was the one. I mean, especially if you were a kid.
In 75, when they started the show, how did you become aware of it if you weren't allowed to stay up?
Didn't know about it.
Okay.
But
I
was
didn't
it
really
like-
know about it till season 3, season 4.
Okay.
And then anecdotally, just people like my parents' friends doing the wild and crazy guys and stuff like that. But you almost didn't know what it was, and it was on so late. It was like, someday I'll stay up late and I'll watch SNL. I think season 4 was probably when I snuck up a couple times. But them rerunning the primetime stuff was huge. But this was, I mean, I was looking at some of the ratings numbers for this show, and it's just massive. Like season 4, 13.1 rating, 39 share, and it was getting 25 million people an episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is like, there's no sporting event that gets that now except the Super Bowl.
Airing at 11:30.
Yeah.
Because there was the Saturday Night Live part of it, and then like the Belushi thing was really interesting to read about this movie and read either contemporaneous pieces or like pieces that were written just about its legacy, and just to try to wrap your head around like how big he was and what he meant to people and the practicality of his stardom, because so much of his legend is like, and then Belushi closed the bar down.
Yeah.
You know, which is like a kind of celebrity thing that if people are doing that now, like it's almost going to be a problem because they're going to get in so much trouble. But you know, Belushi was really literally like he was America's guest.
Right.
Yeah.
One of a kind. The guy that didn't jump off the show initially because Chevy Chase did, but then when Chevy Chase leaves, then Belushi and Aykroyd kind of take over the show. And then season 3 was their big year, and then they started dabbling around with the Blues Brothers and eventually led to them leaving. There's been great books written about SNL, and especially like this was the first test case. Chevy was the first one, and then these guys of like when you outgrow the show and Hollywood comes calling, but then there's cocaine too, which became a big part of the legacy of this movie. They talk about it, and everything you'd ever read about this movie, it was about how much cocaine was involved.
They're so candid about it.
Yeah.
It's weird how much this movie is instrumental to his legacy too, because he just didn't make very many movies.
Yeah.
You know, it ultimately, when you look back on his career, like the body of work is pretty small, in part because he died so young, but he just didn't, because he was on that show from 75 to 78, he was just on the show.
Yeah,
So-
that was one of the big problems with season 4 for him. The last SNL season was he started filming 1941 at the same time. He was flying back and forth, and you know, doing a ton of drugs, and his performance started to fade. But yeah, I remember seeing Neighbors in the theater. That was after Blues Brothers, and it was just so disappointing. They switched roles, and Aykroyd was the crazy one, and Belushi was like the straight man. And then near the end, like his eyebrow goes up, and this was kind of the movie that became, this and Animal House were the two that became the Belushi movies. But that Animal House wasn't a Belushi movie. He was in it. It made him a star.
Yeah.
So I think for somebody like me, when I see, I don't know, Chris Farley, Jack Black, Will Ferrell, like all of the guys who are in the lineage of what Belushi started
Do
or
anything
carved out.
for a joke.
Yes, the super physical, like very emotionally animated, but also kind of like balletic and had like theater background. You know, like that weird combination of this guy's a maniac, but he's a real artist at the same time.
And charismatic.
Super charismatic. So when he hit, were people like, there's never been anything like this before?
I mean, that's, as a little kid, that's certainly how I felt. But I think Hollywood felt that way too. He was such a phenomenon. I mean, well, there's so much to talk about, but he did the Triple Crown in 78. He had the #1 movie, he had the #1 album, and he was on the #1 most important show at the same time, which is like never, I don't think anyone's done that again.
I don't think so.
People have done 2 and
yeah.
3.
The
like
Weeknd
Eddie
is
Murphy
going
had 2
for
and
it,
3.
you know,
Weeknd
with
is
the Idol
definitely
and the album and the
Idol
movie
that
coming
happened.
out later this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he, between the show and then Animal House, he hit some level of stardom that just I don't think is you can't compare it to anything now because it can never happen. Especially when we had so few TV channels and programs, and fame was just completely different back then. But I think the thing that you feel in this movie with him was he was just so talented. Like he's actually a really good musical performer,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
for what he is. When you feel like he's an actor, think of all the actors we've had moonlighting as singers, and this guy's like commanding. You know, they toured with Steve Martin in '78 after I think season 3. And Steve Martin was at the height of his fame,
He's
right?
doing
That's
like
what he
9
wrote the book
nights
about.
in
Yeah.
LA. Yeah.
And the Blues Brothers are opening up for them. Like, can you imagine having like a ticket for that?
That Universal Amphitheater show that the first one that they did with Steve Martin became that album that you're talking
Yeah.
about and sold almost 4 million copies
Yeah.
in 1978 of just them doing the Blues Brothers review for an hour.
And
So-
then Aykroyd was kind of a freak too because he was smart enough. Like he loved Belushi, defended him, stuck up for him, but was also really talented in his own right and was the perfect straight man for him. Like didn't really care if he got the credit. Was all about kind of platforming the two of them together, but also pushing John and
Kind of uses him as a like a vehicle to get a lot of his ideas expressed, right? Because like a lot of the stuff that's in Blues Brothers is directly from Aykroyd and Aykroyd's interests and all the stuff like of these are the musicians that we need to feature and the songs that need to be featured. I just cannot believe this worked.
I know.
can't believe
I
this
had
is
that. That was one of the first things I wrote down. A movie that shouldn't have ever worked, probably didn't totally work, and yet became one of the great pop culture documents of this entire era. Like the people you're getting, and you're getting Belushi and Aykroyd at their peak. You're getting James Brown and Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin, and then all of these randos like John Candy and
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher. It's like an amazing document.
Right place, right time. I still don't. I have some theories as to why it was a success, but I don't think not being there takes it away. Because to me, the success of this movie and Belushi's power is a little bit like hearing like Orson Welles is the greatest director of all time. Like someone tells you that, someone tells me that when I'm 12, and I'm like, well, that just must be true.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a kind
Yeah.
of received wisdom about the greatness, and this is one of the only documents we have of the greatness. But then when I think about the movies that were really popular in the 70s, and I'm like, okay, so Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run, before that, Mad
Is
World.
some of those weird
Like,
Burt Reynolds movies.
Yeah.
those movies are like this movie where it's like cool person pops up every 5 minutes. You got a musical number, car chases, car crashes.
It's like a variety show.
And it kind of has all the pieces that you're like, yeah, this is kind of what movie going was like. And it had the 2 stars from one of the biggest shows of that era. So it does make sense in that way.
And an incredible amount of cocaine.
Yes.
And that's the thing that kind of jumps out is like everything about this movie is 1970s, but the bloat is pure 80s. Like
Yeah.
the excess, the
And
like
it bridges the 2 decades. It's made in '79 and
Yeah.
released in '80.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like musicals.
Okay.
This is my favorite musical by far. I don't even know what's second. What's your favorite musical?
Singing in the Rain. I love The Wizard of Oz. I really love classic musicals. I am almost allergic to modern musicals.
Yeah.
I think that this is a cool version of a musical. I think the people who made it, what did they describe it as? Oh, as a musical in camouflage, one of the producers said, which I
Yeah.
thought was a cool way of describing it, which is like, yeah, there's a lot of musical numbers here, and the movie is basically a series of set pieces, like you said, but no one breaks out into song to explain the story,
yeah.
which is something that a lot of people who don't like musicals tend to blanch at.
What's your favorite musical?
It's a little bit of a cheat, but All That Jazz. The Roy Scheider.
Oh,
movie,
that's a
which
good
is
one.
More about choreography than it is about music, but it has a lot of
Also
musical
about
numbers.
drugs.
Yes, and also about drugs.
Going back to the Belushi thing, because you're asking like, what was it like? Like, how was he perceived? Because you think of all the lineage of the guys, especially Farley. Farley became like the son of Belushi and just talked about him constantly and was from Chicago and, you know, was almost in some ways seemed like he just wanted to repeat Belushi's fast life and quick death. The only thing I can compare it to is like athletes. When you like somebody comes in and like Dr. J comes in and it's just like, whoa, you can do that? Like I just don't feel like Belushi, he was like a complete original. And even in the first SNL, he's the first person you see.
Yeah.
He's doing the one where he's like, I'd like to feed your fingertips to the Wolverines. But I remember this skit that I saw when I was like, who is this guy? It was the It was the when he played the Incredible Hulk in the Superman sketch, and he blew out the bathroom, and it was one of the first SNL sketches I'd ever seen. I was like, what's going on? What world is this?
Yeah.
Can I just go into this world? But that was it. He just had it. Some people just have it.
Some stars they're inconceivable. Like you can't really imagine being around them. Like Julia Roberts, like or something like that, where you're like, I would never see this person in any place that I would ever go. They exist on another plane of existence. And Belushi is like the Olympian of the funniest guy in every bar in America. And the fact that, tragically, I guess, but he truly was like a man of the people. It's a kind of stardom that I just don't think we have that much anymore, where it's this idea that people would have like, oh, I was out at 1:30 in the morning and John Belushi came in with like 15 people and they took over the jukebox and they bought the entire like round for the entire house. And I think that has something to do with his charm.
And they said he was like the all-time king of a city in Chicago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like just kind of just moved around, probably never
Could
had
like
a wallet.
hail a cop car to take him
People
home
are just
from a
putting
bar.
cocaine in his pocket.
Yeah.
I think when you think of how like short Belushi's career actually was, like you mentioned, he really didn't make that many movies.
And not that many good movies.
He was only on SNL for 80 episodes, you know? But I think part of the legend and the stuff that I used to love when I was, you know, in the 80s after he died, and it was like one of the first really sad deaths for me. It's like, oh man, I fucking love, but he's dead. But a lot of the legend was all these stories. And just these larger than life and people trying to save him and people trying to help him. And, you know, he was just like this comet that wasn't going to last. That was kind of part of the point of him.
I feel like his iconography, though, is a little bit of an inaccurate representation of what kind of a performer he was, though.
Yeah.
Because he's like actually a much more serious actor in almost everything that he's done. And even in this movie, this is not a Chris Farley performance. I mean, he's dancing, but
it's almost more... Will Ferrell's more applicable because it's the idea of playing something deadly serious that's so absurd.
Yes. But
So
he's
like,
not pratfalling.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he did some really good stuff on SNL, but the best one of the most famous sketches they ever had was that Star Trek one. When they cancel Star Trek and he's Kirk.
Yeah.
And it's like a 9-minute sketch and he's just like great in it. But he could basically do anything. One thing that I always thought with him after the fact was like all the movies he didn't make, you know, like, because About Last Night came out in 86, which is a movie CR and I love. And Jim Belushi played the part that was supposed to be the Belushi part. Mm-hmm. There's this whole other era where he's just like randomly he's the rom-com buddy in one movie. He's like a sports GM in another. Like I feel like his career could have been great. Obviously, that's part of the appeal.
Yeah, you wonder what his aspirations were. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know.
Like, could he have played? He couldn't have done Raging Bull, maybe, but like you could see him playing like a boxer. You could see him playing
like how Jamie Foxx almost did that turn when he was in Ali and all of a sudden started. I don't know what.
I think you can see it even I don't know if you've ever seen Old Boyfriends.
Yeah,
you know,
Talia
but that Talia Shire movie, which is directed by Joan Tewksbury, written by Paul Schrader.
Yeah.
And he has it's a funny part, but it's a really serious part. You know, like he obviously was drawn to a kind of intense pathos in the characters while also being able to be Blutarsky. You know, like he could do both of those things. So I think he would do a lot of serious stuff. He's just trained theater actor.
The documentary was excellent about him. The best Belushi story was that one. They're like in the Hamptons and they're up at 5:30 in the morning and they're like the party's way over and it's just like Aykroyd and somebody else and they hear this like splashing and they look out and Belushi's just doing like cannonballs off the pool and Aykroyd looks at whoever was with them and he's like, Albanian oak. Because Belushi was Albanian. It's like pure Albanian oak. So you could feel some of that even when you watch this. Like I'm sure there's scenes when he's just zonked out. He's got sunglasses on the whole time. But when he turns it on, he turns it on.
Yeah. Sounded like a hard production.
I can't wait to talk about that. So from an SNL standpoint, this is these guys pop on the show twice. Mm-hmm. They're on for the famous. First of all, they were a warm-up act. Then season 3, March 78, April 22nd. Steve Martin's the host. Mm-hmm. This is still considered the best SNL of all time. And they're the musical guests. And they did Hey Bartender and I Don't Know. And people are like, what's going on? These guys are on the cast. That led to the summer and everything after. Then they were on in November again. They did for Carrie Fisher's show, they sang Soul Man. So when you look back at Belushi's 78, where he's on the biggest show, he's opening for Steve Martin, who's the hottest stand-up comedian. Animal House comes out in late July, becomes a phenomenon, is going on magazines and stuff. Then they come back for season 4, and they're like, they've transcended the show. It's like it happened to Eddie Murphy too. But then in December, they put out the album from the live thing, and that sells out and goes platinum. And it all happens in like 9 months. And I don't think, he couldn't handle it.
There's a thing with SNL where obviously like it's like, is it funny or like what sketches you like? But I think, and the movie Saturday Night tried to get at this. A lot of the discussion about SNL at this point has gotten at this, where it's like it's also this club you want to be a part of, and like this cool club. So the idea of these guys being like, what we really like is 60s soul and blues,
right?
And so we would like to like form the greatest bar band of all time, and like we'll gig around and we'll warm up before, but like maybe you can find a spot for us here or here or here. That actually is part of the SNL mission as much as like Weekend Update or making like you want to see like this weird like cool club that you want to be a part of. Like it's that idea of New York City, that idea of like
they build a blues bar in there. All of a sudden it becomes one of the hot places in New York.
Yeah.
I think also it just underscores that Saturday Night Live at the beginning was a variety show.
Yeah,
it wasn't 14 sketches consecutively. It was something a little different than that. And that something like this, which isn't like, there are no jokes.
It's weird because it's neither funny nor the best version of this music.
Right. And yet there's something kind of entrancing about what they're doing where you're almost like waiting for it to be something other than them just singing a Sam and Dave song. But then you get to the end and you're like, that was cool.
Yeah.
As a kid, though, I loved when Belushi would do the somersaults. I loved Aykroyd with the briefcase where they'd unlock it. I liked how he danced.
Yes.
Just all the stuff they were doing.
It had like bits inside of it that you were trying to figure out what they were doing and why they were doing it. But it was also really, because of Aykroyd, it was so sincere.
Yeah.
I mean, he really like just loves the blues and blues history, like really loves it.
That was one of the cool lessons from this whole thing. Like these guys did it and they actually did it. Like, and part of it was because Belushi was so charismatic, but they went and got some of like the best backup people in America. They took it super seriously. They really tried to like, figure out their performances. It wasn't like some vanity thing. Like,
no, Steve
Belushi
Cropper
wanted to be
and
the
Duff
biggest
Dunn
band in the
are
world.
in the Booker T and the MGs. It's like one of the great bands in American history.
Hall of Fame sidemen. They're in the conversation for the best sidemen guitarists of all time.
So by the end of 78, Belushi's the most important funny person. He probably took the title from Steve Martin. It's probably them in the finals at that point. The other interesting part with Belushi and Aykroyd together is like there's just not a lot of great tandems. Because I feel like if Belushi stays alive, these guys probably make 15 movies together. Like Damon and Affleck, we saw there's a trailer for another movie with them. That looks great. Rip, I can't wait. But there's just not a lot of tandems. You think like Laurel and Hardy a million years ago, Martin and Lewis.
Yeah. Abbott Costello. Yeah, there's a lineage of it in American comedy,
but not like
before
last
that.
50 years.
Yeah,
like Farley and Spade made 2 movies and were in some
Key and
SNL
Peele,
sketches.
there have been a couple of examples.
Steve Martin and Martin Short have done a bunch of stuff.
Sort of doing, but it's not as common as it was. It was because of vaudeville. It was a thing that vaudeville really pushed, where you were coming out for teams, and teams had routines that you liked that they did for years together, and they're riffing on that.
Well, you said that earlier about this. This is like something that belongs to the 70s in some ways. Those were a lot of the shows that I watched as a kid. Like I love Flip Wilson. That was one of my favorite shows. Donnie and Marie had a show. Like Captain and Tennille had a show.
All variety shows.
The Osmonds.
Crockett and Tubbs.
Mary Tyler Moore had a variety show. These shows where you do sketches, but then you would also sing.
Yep.
So they kind of made sense in that context. But this was, I don't know how many SNL movies we've had since.
I think it's 8 since this.
And probably pieces of other ones or characters.
Yeah. But like based on characters that are in the show, I think it's 9 total.
Right.
Okay.
So it opened the door for at least like, they made it. They're making a Wayne's World movie. All right, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And
do you think this is far and away the best Saturday Night Live movie?
I think Wayne's World's really good.
I think Wayne's World's more of a coherent movie.
It's weird because I think this is a better movie, but Wayne's World is funnier.
How about this? Which one would you rather order as a 4K Blu-ray?
Well, I'll take both when they issue Blues
Are
Brothers
you
on
going to
4K.
do an update on your habit?
Yeah, you're slipping down the rabbit
I
hole.
watched this Blues Brothers movie on 4K Blu-ray.
Did you?
Yeah,
And
How did it look?
fantastic.
Can I make a case? Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up.
Really good.
Obviously, I love to talk about this. I watched the movie on Blu-ray. I don't own it on 4K. And then I watched the bonus material like I always do when we do these pods. And the bonus material was all converted from VHS.
Yeah.
And I was like, it looks better this way.
this
is
interesting.
This is a movie. Now, not all movies from the 70s and 80s are like this, but this is a movie that feels right to me.
Yeah.
In VHS.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel that way about Predator. Like, some people would say, oh, Predator is like that. I saw it on VHS.
No, but I
for the
feel that
first
way
time.
about like Trading Places.
Right.
There's a
Comedies.
griminess that I think works for
The
I see what
cinema
you
of
mean.
John Landis is really appropriate.
It
for
is a VHS cinema
Yeah.
for sure. That's the only time he was a true powerhouse in the industry.
Farrell and Riley,
Yeah.
I guess, have made a couple, but nobody thinks of them as a tandem necessarily.
It kind of fell out, right?
Yeah. So the Chicago movie Renaissance is another piece of this, CR. One of your favorite topics.
Sure.
79 and 80, we have My Bodyguard, Blues Brothers, The Hunter, Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Solid movie. And Somewhere in Time with Chris Reeve.
Oh wow. And then
And
like,
then it was because they had a new mayor, Mayor Daley. And she's like, let's grab some of that Hollywood. So eventually that leads to 1981 Continental Divide. Big chunks of Escape from New York.
Filmed there.
And a movie called Thief by
Hell
the
yeah.
one and only Michael Mann.
Yeah.
And then we're off. Risky Business, 16 Candles, Streets of Fire,
Running
Code of
Scared.
Silence, Class.
Right.
And we're just off.
Right.
But Blues Brothers is one of the first ones. And I think probably the biggest Chicago love letter, I would guess. Like they even figured out a way to put Wrigley Field in there out of nowhere.
yeah. Well,
Ferris
the-
Bueller is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
but
That's
I
it.
don't think there is a Ferris Bueller without Blues Brothers.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
We also have musical numbers from James Brown, Cab Calloway, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, John Lee Hooker. We have cameos or extended parts from Carrie Fisher, John Candy, Henry Gibson, Twiggy, Steve Spielberg, Joe Walsh, and Frank Oz. There's a Jerry Orbach cameo in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's like, I do kind of miss that vibe in movies.
Yeah.
Where it was like, this guy showed up for a day. That's the guy who does Miss Piggy, and then there's a Miss Piggy joke 20 minutes later. you
Yeah,
know?
we should have like Paul Thomas Anderson should appear as a clerk in more movies.
I would love that.
Yeah.
famously troubled production, as Sierra alluded to. Aykroyd 6 months to write the script, and it was 324 pages and incoherent.
Yeah.
And then they had to whittle it down.
He had never read a script or written a script and wrote a 300. Yeah, the 300. It was like a Bible.
with
but-
just tangents and
Yeah.
his thoughts about Catholicism and
Yes.
weird shit in there.
Did you guys go into depth on Aykroyd when you did Trading Places? Did you have like an Aykroyd segment?
I don't know if
No,
we did.
I don't think so. I think
didn't
we talked a
full
lot
tilt
more
it.
about
He's
Eddie
No.
so
Murphy.
interesting.
Yeah.
He really is.
He has this crazy brain and this amazing career, and he's still alive, and he's still showing up in Ghostbusters movies, and he's still selling Crystal Skull vodka, and he's clearly a one of one. I mean, there's never been anybody like him
Canadian.
in movies. He is a Canadian, but he also
Women loved him, by the way.
which is really weird. But
Stickman.
when you watch,
Landed Donna Dixon, which was no small feat in the early 80s.
Yeah.
when
she
you
was
watch
a goddess.
the Reitman movie, he's got Dylan O'Brien playing him,
Yeah.
who's like a young, handsome guy, and it's legit.
Yeah.
He's like kind of the hunk of that show. But what we know him as, I don't know, Ray from Ghostbusters.
Sure.
Goofball nerd.
What
guy.
happened, all of a sudden he was Tommy Boy, the big,
Right.
portly, Carson. Yeah, he was so young when he was on SNL. I think he was 22 or 23. And then just does the Belushi. It's always, I think he was a little more randy in the late 70s, early 80s than maybe Belushi gets too much credit for it. And Aykroyd, I think they were definitely running mates from time to time.
Yeah.
But I think everybody was like that back
Yeah.
then.
And also, this still an era where, the people who wind up on television or in movies have had a life before that. And he's got a bar in Toronto, and he, is
Right.
just obsessed with this music
Mhm.
and has all these
He's invested in
kind
all
of
these
thinks of,
cool things.
almost as a public intellectual in some ways, but it's just translating it into the most absurd
But
boxes.
he's in a great lineage of kinds of SNL guys that I love, like Hader, like Phil Hartman, where
Could
it's
write for themselves.
Yeah.
had their own idea, had their own characters, were good at impressions, and were their brains were traps.
and really, really
he would
good
write,
partners. Yeah.
and also sold people. Would do Straight Man, but
Yeah.
also would do Julia Child. You know what I mean? He could do all that. He's so interesting to me.
He created the prototype for Hartman, Hader, all those dudes. He was
Yeah.
the first one. And there's only a few people that have been on the show where everybody else was like, the guy was like a fucking genius. He just was, it was clear he was going to outgrow the show and do something else and do more stuff. Anyway, he ended a 324-page script and there was no budget. And it was a mess from the beginning. Car crashes. The downtown scene at the end cost $3.5 million. Aykroyd worked cocaine into the budget because they had so many night shoots.
Yeah.
People were cool with that because it was 1979.
I actually got that done for this show too.
Yeah.
Just a heads up.
Belushi's party like the maniac. I was going to do cocaine before we did the categories.
Is this the closest you've ever been to cocaine? Because you famously are like, I've never been in a room with cocaine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is you can feel the cocaine oozing off the Blu-ray when you put it in. You're like, oh yeah.
If you could have, you would have done the line off of the Blu-ray.
Yeah, Belushi could have talked me into it. There was so much drugs and partying that they opened a bar on the set called the Blues Club for themselves, crew, and friends.
This is why don't we have a private bar called like the war room, like the draft war room or something, or call it the trade machine. Hey guys,
drugs and alcohol.
That's good.
Yeah,
the trade machine as the Ringer speakeasy. People would line up for that.
Like a bar in the basement of this building at Spotify. They don't have to know. Daniel doesn't have to know.
Daniel. Well, it ended up being a $27.5 million budget, which was like $1 gajillion in 1979.
That's a lot. Yeah. That's like a Fast and Furious movie now.
There's a lot of Lou Wasserman being completely pissed off about how much and calling and killing guys day after day about how the budget's spiraling. Yeah, they just kind of lost the control of this.
Yeah, and like it sounds like there was documentation of the fact that this was going out of control and that Belushi was kind of out of control, but not in the TMZ. We have this on film way. It was more of a like
stealth
urban legend. Like, did you hear Belushi closed down like the old saloon last night?
Right.
Well, it made $115.2 million. It was 10th overall in 1980. It's still to this day the 6th biggest musical of all time. It was released on the same day as The Empire Strikes Back. What a movie theater day that was.
Incredible.
That has to be one of the top. I remember we did that once about the best day in a movie theater. That's got to be up there. They launched a Blues Brothers concert tour the same day.
Do you know what was right above the Blues Brothers that year at number 9?
What?
It also had the word blue in its title. The Blue Lagoon.
Oh, yeah.
So funny how some movies are remembered and others are forgotten, in that time.
Well, I think that movie's been canceled.
It has been canceled.
LA Times, Charles Champlin.
Great critic.
Called it a $30 million wreck minus the laughs.
Mixed reviews on the Blues Brothers.
Oh, Charles.
Pretty savage because people knew it cost a lot of money and they launched a tour the same day. And I think people were doing the whole ego's gone awry kind of thing.
Didn't matter.
Yeah. And then the movie did what the champs of it were Ebert and Siskel.
Yeah.
Siskel loved it. Ebert gave it 3 stars. He said the Blues Brothers cost untold millions of dollars, kept starting to grow completely out of control. But director John Landis has somehow pulled it all together. Belushi and Aykroyd come over as hard-boiled city guys, total cynics with a worldview of sublime simplicity. There's even room.
Overread there.
They're on a mission from God.
They're pulling a Fennessey there, yeah.
There's even room in the midst of the carnage and mayhem for a surprising amount of grace, humor, and whimsy. Raj, he must have loved Belushi.
Yeah.
You know,
Chicago
Belushi probably turned up the charm with him at some point. So yeah, we forgot to mention that, or I forgot to mention the Landis directed Animal House, and they got him for Blues Brothers, and they were pretty tight. And
Landis in the middle of an amazing run of movies.
Kentucky Fried Movie, Animal House, Blues Brothers, Werewolf in London, Coming Soon, Trading Places, and then obviously Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Coming to America.
Yeah.
Of the top 10 movies that you're talking about this year at the box office, 7 of them are comedies. It's
a great time.
Very different than how things are now.
Landis as a director, any movie nerd notes?
Master of the comic set piece from that period of time. Obviously, his career is seen in a completely different light because of the tragic events in the Twilight Zone movie. But I think he often, despite not having the nicest reputation as a person, got the best out of complicated comedy figures, including Belushi, including Eddie Murphy. Like, he really got Chevy. He got really like their best movie performances most of the time. Three Amigos. Like he really captured something very special in them. And I think part of it was because he created a lot of chaos and those people are good in chaotic
And
environments.
it's a bummer that Craig's not here today, but it's one of those things where you like, is what Landis does best, is that what's aged the worst? Like, does anybody find 80 car pileups entertaining anymore in that way?
In this movie, he takes it to an art, like a level of art.
It's absurd.
That is so funny and exciting, but
well, it's almost like they're making it like a comic book or something.
Totally,
right?
Yeah.
But like through the first half of the movie, there's a part of me that is like, this is kind of boring. And then just to make us sit through like yet another car chase.
Yeah.
But by the time the car goes into the truck, I'm like, this is genius level stuff.
Right.
You know, like I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
So I think it's pushing it, like you're saying, like the pushing of the envelope is part of what makes him good at what he was going for.
One of the deleted scenes, they leave the gas station after Twiggy drives away. And Belushi's smoking a cigarette, and he throws the cigarette and it blows up the gas station. I was like, why'd they cut that?
Yeah.
Like, they left 90 other
There are
terrible things
jokes in this movie, or like things that happen in this movie that he was lampooning in Kentucky Fried Movie like a couple of years before. But it's almost like, no, this is what happens when you give this guy
when you make a real movie.
like $30 million. Yeah.
What's the exact perfect age to see this movie? I thought about this long and hard. I think it's like late teens. It's like
16.
18, 19,
Yeah.
I would say.
You want me to tell my relationship to this movie?
Yeah, go.
When I was 16 years old, my uncle was an executive at Seagram's, and Seagram's was owned at that time Vivendi Universal. And 1998 is the year of Blues Brothers 2000. And
Unfortunately,
for my 16th birthday, Chris has heard me tell this story many times. He lived in California, and he flew me to Los Angeles for my 16th birthday. He was my godfather, and we went to the premiere of Blues Brothers 2000. And went to the after party, and I met the entire cast. And that was the moment when I was like, I have to move to Los Angeles. Like, I have to be here. I was already obsessed with movies. And I watched the Blues Brothers like 5 times before seeing Blues Brothers 2000. So I was like, I got to get ready. Like, I got to
Just in case Aykroyd is like you.
Yeah, you never know. But, I was just really, really excited. And we didn't know that Blues Brothers 2000 was going to be such a fiasco. Like, there was kind of anticipation for it. And
it's a sad one.
The movie is really rough, but you would never know at the after party. At the after party, it was like, we did it once again.
Mm-hmm.
Another masterpiece from Dan Aykroyd and John Landis, furthering this legacy of this franchise. But so I got the movie in my bloodstream because of that. And I was 15 going on 16 when I was watching it and getting obsessed with it. So that was going to be my answer for that question.
I have 16. I think it's a great age because you would be just getting into maybe like other kinds of music outside of pop music. So you'd be interested in like soul music. And this is what it was the case for me, is like, that was right when, like Otis Redding box set was coming out. The Stax singles box set was coming out around then. And then you're also like, I like car crashes and I like watching things blow up.
Yeah, the correct answer might be 10 because I really love this movie. And I'm on this text thread with a couple of my best friends from high school and the guy they went to college. And I was just like, hey, we're doing Blues Brothers. And they're just like, orange whip, 3 orange whips. And all of a sudden they're just texting lines. New Oldsmobiles are out. It's just one of those movies. And I think like Stripes was like that. Caddyshack. There's just a couple from the early 80s that they just lived on for 4.5 decades now.
I think it's probably a little tough to watch this after 30 for the first time.
For the first time.
Yeah. That's also like, what's the wrong age to watch this movie for the first time is an interesting counter question.
I don't know if you're 30 years old right now watching this, I don't think you can correctly capture the impact of like James Brown and Aretha and Ray Charles at that point of their careers.
Yeah.
Where it just felt like a huge deal that
they were still functional. Like,
I didn't know who
they were
John
still
Lee
like
Hooker was.
working musicians at that time.
But many of them were at an ebb. They were like at a lower.
But it was just amazing that they were in the movie because
Yeah.
it was like this whole genre of music that was like, holy shit, this isn't
it's
just
also
like an
so cool
SNL
too
sketch.
because they're characters. So it's like there's the Reverend, there's the waitress, there's the pawn shop guy. It's like they are being brought into the story rather than, hey, we just happened upon a James Brown concert. You know?
Most rewatchable scene. I mean the opening when Jake gets out of jail and they hug and the way they shoot it with the two things.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're listening to Mule to Ride. Day I get out of prison, my own brother picks me up in a police car. We're just off. And then we do the bridge jump. Like we're just coming out of the gate. Really good opening. Reverend James Brown.
Cleophas.
Yeah. I've got Jake's Epiphany written down here. I feel like that's an iconic moment from this
Epic
movie.
James Brown. Epic Belushi.
Jesus tap dancing Christ.
Yep.
Yeah.
Think stunt double for some of the somersaults or no?
For the handsprings, for sure.
The band. This is going to be a finalist for me. The first real car chase in the mall.
The mall.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fucking kills me.
Dixie Square Mall, yeah.
Heroin imports. New Oldsmobiles are early.
It's a good...
Just like they're all deadpanning, and it's just people are running for their lives, diving.
That is what malls look like, though. I do feel like malls are simultaneously exactly the same and completely different. There's something really janky about malls in the 1980s. They're not like that anymore.
Baby clothes. And Belushi's like so zonked out. It's like, this place has everything.
Yeah.
It's so good. I also love any scene in a mall from like Fast Times had this too. It's just so funny to see the malls back then.
It's just not like that car chase needed to go up a level, and they're like, what if we just drove through a mall?
It's great.
Well, that's what I had for the Dan Campbell skill for holy shit, are they really going for this right now? I think this is like at least an 8.5.
Yep.
Ches Paul.
God, I love this scene.
Is my favorite scene. When they just destroy the French restaurant.
Yeah. How much for the women?
How much for the little girl?
Paul Rubens. Yeah.
The shrimp cocktail, doing the thing around.
Your wife.
One of the criticisms I'd have of this movie is you probably needed 2 more scenes just to unleash Belushi. They really like unleash Belushi in this scene, and I wish they had just done it 2 more times.
So I guess in Aykroyd's quote-unquote script, there was 8 individual plot lines for the recruitment of every member of the band. And it was like, this is probably not like a functional story, but
right.
It
Donald
probably,
Duck Dunn doesn't need like a 5-minute scene.
Yeah, but it probably would have been a lot more like just let Belushi cook in this venue.
Right. They compress it where you've got like all of a sudden the fry cook comes out of the back in the restaurant and is like, he's in the band too. We didn't get the individual origin stories.
Your woman, sell them to me. Who else is pulling that scene off? I mean, he's asking the guy at the next table if he can buy his 8-year-old daughter, and it's fucking hilarious.
I know, and he's like eating the wedge salad that they have. Yeah,
we're gonna come back here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Soul Food Cafe. That whole scene where we just get some John Lee Hooker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Boom, 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 boom. What movie is that? What's the other movie that's from? That's like, is that Risky Business?
Boom 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 is in?
I don't know. I mean, his song...
That song's prominently involved in a movie we love. I think it's Risky Business.
I always think of him with I Need Some Money from Blue Chips. That's like a very famous
good one
scene.
too.
That's John Lee Hooker song, yeah.
And then we get Aretha, Dry White Toast, and 4 Fried Chickens. Good name for a fantasy team.
Yeah. The dried white toast bit throughout the whole movie always cracks me up.
She sings You Better Think, and we get some of the best acting of all time from Matt Guitar Murphy, who just kind of has to move along. So funny, confused. And they're filming takes for 10 hours and he's just wearing an apron.
There's a lot to discuss about the quality of acting from the backing band in this movie.
It's tough. But Aretha's great. She had to lip sync, I guess. There's some stories about she had a little trouble with the lip sync. Maybe they could have let her belt it out. But
yeah. Landis, John Lee Hooker was recorded live, and I think he was the only singer who was recorded live for the entire movie.
Right. That makes sense.
The song's really good. I really enjoy it.
Think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so much fun to watch
the American
that.
canon.
Then we go right to Ray Charles.
Yes.
Yeah.
We go from Aretha right to Ray Charles singing, and we're at Ray's Music Exchange.
This is my favorite.
This has the best dancing, the best this is the best musical number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Outdoor choreographed dance sequence right in front of the L train.
And the dancing in this scene is, I did not know, or it didn't occur to me before, they just do this dancing during Twist and Shout and Ferris Bueller.
Yes, the same choreography.
Basically the same choreography and like all the jumping up and down and stuff. Yeah.
You think B.B. King was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's a good question. What soul stars were like, what?
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Bob's Country Bunker.
Got that too.
Rawhide.
Read into Stand By Your Man.
It's really good.
Belushi's just like, move him up, move him out.
Would you live pod from Bob's Country Bunker and the chicken wire?
Andy and I were actually doing our Landman recaps.
I was just going to say, this is perfect for Sheridan recaps. Yeah. Exactly.
They're just throwing beers at us.
Minnie the Moocher.
Palace
Both
Hotel.
Blues Brothers songs. Carrie Fisher in the tunnel.
Mhm.
The iconic line, 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark and we're wearing sunglasses. Let's hit it. Boom.
Let's hit it.
And then the final car chase highlighted by the Nazis falling to their death for like 2 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that a Pinto? Yeah.
The Bluesmobile collapsing, which I used as a joke in columns for like the next 20 years. And then all the guns pointed to them at the end. What do you got? Most rewatchable scene?
I'm going to say Ray's Music Exchange.
Okay.
And here's why. I think Ray Charles is the best actor who's not an actor in the movie. And he has comic timing, which we later learned watching Pepsi commercials in the 90s. And I love that is like that feels the most like a musical sequence, not just because of the dancing that you're talking about, but because they really do need instruments from him. Like it's central to the movie plot. Now it's not as fun as the car chase stuff, but I love the song that is played. I love the dancing, and I love the comedy. So that's my pick.
Yeah, I had Shea Paul as the funniest scene in the movie, and this is my favorite scene in the movie. So I don't know what's the most rewatchable.
I have Shea Paul or the mall. The mall kills me.
The mall's good.
The okay motherfucker award for the exact moment when the movie goes up a notch. Is that the same as the Dan Campbell scale? We really gotta. Maybe I gotta pick one. I think they've won both of those.
I have in the church when Aykroyd's like, or whoever's like, and God bless the United States of America.
We're ready to go.
Yeah.
What's the most 1980 thing about this movie? Would you go with the 1970s police cars that are just getting destroyed left and right, or expensive suit being $10?
I think probably well, I have other ones, but I would. I have that the other executive who was their rival from Paramount who wanted this movie and didn't get it was Don Simpson.
Oh, Jesus.
Which I don't know if anyone lives through production if Don Simpson is running it.
Yeah.
A production where they already had cocaine in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other one was being so famous, you just decide you're a musician. Like being so popular and so beloved that you're like, you know what we got to do? Make an album.
Yeah.
Mine is related to that, which is just an R&B musical car chase movie about two white felons. Like, I don't think that would get made today.
On a mission from God. Yeah.
That's not that, that reminds me of 1980.
Yeah. What's age the best? Belushi and Aykroyd. Elwood's crappy apartment. If you've seen this movie enough times, you really got to study it when they're in there it is like 8 by 10.
I got some incredible takes about that one. I've decided that I do want to talk about that.
Okay, we'll save it.
We'll save it, yeah.
What's age the best? Shitting on white supremacists?
It's a great one.
It's a great villain.
Yeah.
We learned that from Spielberg. Yeah.
Calling a head nun the penguin?
Yeah.
That was really funny. I don't think I got that when I was a kid.
Carrie Fisher's hair salon was called Curl Up and Die with a DYE.
It's so good.
Sneak that one in.
Also, just like her bit of being like, I am learning advanced weaponry to kill this guy.
Such a perfect thing to happen the year of Empire Strikes Back. She's not the damsel in distress. She's the destroyer.
Her being in this is what's age the best. We see a wide shot of Chicago and there's a movie theater and the three movies are Escape from Alcatraz, The Warriors, and Up in Smoke.
Ooh, that's a sick
Just sounds
lineup.
like a fucking unbelievable triple header.
We used to really make stuff here.
Yeah, that's a good trio.
It's definitely not a triple header for a date.
No.
It's a I'm not working today. Yeah. I think I'll go see 3 movies.
The boys brought a 6-pack into the movie theater. Yeah.
Ray-Bans, Blues Brothers and Risky Business, supercharged Chicago movies and Ray-Bans. You mentioned Colleen Camp's Playboy magazine poster, which was also featured in Apocalypse Now, that they carefully put in Elwood's apartment, I think as a tribute to Apocalypse Now.
Were you able to kind of...
You want me to do it now?
Yeah.
I don't know why I clocked that, but watching it this time, I did clock it, that the poster that is in Elwood's apartment is Colleen Camp from Apocalypse Now. She plays one of the Playboy bunnies. But in researching this, in researching this, I learned, and I don't think this is apocryphal, I think it's true, that it was Linda Carter from Wonder Woman who was originally cast in the role that Colleen Camp was cast in Apocalypse Now. She went to the set of the movie and she filmed scenes, but Hurricane Olga hit during the production of Apocalypse Now. So she had to leave because they closed down the production, because the production closed down many times during the making of that movie. She goes back, and when she goes back, she gets cast in the TV series Wonder Woman. So she's not available to be in this movie. So Colleen Camp gets recast in this part. Thing is, by the time they recast. They had already done the Playboy photo shoot with Linda Carter. So I learned all this last night, I promise you. A very rare piece of movie memorabilia is the original poster
centerfold
of Linda Carter in the centerfold. And Colleen Camp is also shot in the exact same pose, background, styling, everything in the centerfold that appears in this movie.
The Linda Carter centerfold going for on eBay?
It just said sold on the site that I found. So
Bill.
I don't know. But Bill, if you want to try to contact
Sold to me.
I thought that was a great movie arcana.
Certainly answers the piece of memorabilia you would want from this movie.
So that's a more important Linda Carter picture than the Philippine Shakey's photo?
I guess so.
One of the great photos of all time. You see that one?
Like the pizza place?
She's wearing a Shakey's pizza shirt, but it says Philippine Shakey's.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's
just say she doesn't not look awesome.
There's a lot of Linda Carter prop memorabilia stuff out there.
All time.
Okay.
What a legend. City of Chicago for What's Age the Best. It just uses a lot of it. And I really appreciate it. What else do you have, CR?
Conducting meetings in saunas.
Oh, yeah.
The
Steve
reveal
Lawrence.
that the entire band is in the sauna with them. And the way Belushi's like, how's Mrs. Slime? I love that scene so much. And then, I'd curl up and die. I had the making of the movie being better than the movie itself. Just stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think also just SNL converting characters to movies.
Yeah.
It really paved the way for a huge thing that became a big part of the show in the 90s.
Also, this is pretty basic, but this music, like the 60s R&B soul, is arguably the best music America's ever produced.
Never expires.
And
Yeah.
it's just like when you hear them.
That's one of the big things for this movie, I think. The music has aged perfectly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a What's Age the Best or What's Age the Worst, but when Phil Hartman did the Sinatra Group sketch and Mike Myers is Steve Lawrence and and him and Edie Gourmet are just sucking up to Phil and he's like, you tell him, Chairman.
Is it Jan Hooks who's Edie? I
That's
can't who
right.
plays
Yeah.
Edie. Yeah.
Wait,
then
was it Jan Hooks? Who played Sinead?
No, she played Jan Hooks.
Okay, yeah.
Somebody else was playing
Because
Edie.
he's like, cue ball.
Yeah.
But at some points, Sinatra gets mad at Steve Lawrence, like, shut up. Guys are just swimming in my wake. And he's like, what's wrong, Chairman? And for some reason, anytime I see Steve Lawrence, I think of that
We
now.
should do a Rewatchables for Phil Hartman sketches.
Oh my God,
dude.
dude. That's my
greatest.
number one favorite.
He's the best.
That was the chunks of guys like you in my stool. Great shot, Gordo. Most cinematic shot. Jake's footsteps when they're leaving prison, they go underneath for the shot up.
Yeah.
But I really like the very end when it scales back and there's 300 people pointing guns at them. That one shot
That's good too.
is
Yeah.
really good. What do you got? Anything else?
I get the trooper going into the truck.
Kid Cudi, Pursuit of Happiness, or Best Needle Drop. I don't know if the songs count when they're built-in numbers. So maybe John Lee
Oh.
Hooker.
I had Boom Boom just because it's
Yeah.
not one of their songs, and it's also just so sick the way they shoot it and like seeing
Yeah.
him.
Okay, I agree. The Chess Rockwell and Brock Landers Award for Best Character Name. I mean, Elwood Blues is pretty good.
Juliet Jake Blues.
Joliet Jake Blues.
I like Matt Guitar Murphy.
So I had Matt Guitar
and
Murphy.
Blue Lou.
Yeah,
Blue Lou Maroney. Yeah.
Matt Guitar Murphy. I go. All right, CR flex category. What do you got?
When would I have died?
Yeah, let's
I'm
hear it.
taking this from usually thriller and horror movies that we do,
Mhm.
but one of the things you have to wrap your mind around when you're watching this film is just how many times you would have died. So I would have probably gone when Carrie Fisher detonated the SRO hotel
Mhm.
and the entire room caves in. Or I would probably be shopping for wicker furniture at Dixie Square Mall, Pier 1, and got hit by an Oldsmobile. We're like, oh, we could just put this right outside.
Yeah, that's a nice piece.
That's a good one. The Vincent Chase Award for Are We Sure This Character Was Actually Good at His Job. The Clarion Records head who just sees one song with
And
his
it's just like,
convicted
here's
felons.
$10,000. Yeah.
So here's a bag of 10,000 cash.
And I'm also going to aid and abet your
Yeah.
felonious
I know
escape.
everyone's looking for you guys, but here's 10,000 cash.
Yeah. There's a few people who are eligible for this award, also maybe for the next award. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Are the Blues Brothers good at blues music? They're good at R&B.
Yeah. When do they ever sing a blues song?
No,
No.
not really.
It's more like 70s blues, I think, is the gimmick.
Yeah, I know it's like electric blues, but they're not singing Muddy Waters songs really. They're singing like Sam and Dave songs. They're singing,
Yeah.
Well, and for the most part, they dance a bunch and do like speeches,
which is obviously not what blues musicians do.
Yeah.
You know, Sean, they're entertainers.
That's fair. They called themselves the Blues Brothers.
Well, that is obviously your Butch's Girlfriend award for the weak link of the film.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess are they good at their job? They were good at entertaining. But
Yeah.
were they great at blues music? Are we sure that Burton Mercer was good at his job? The parole officer?
Well, I was going to say, are we sure the Penguin was good at her job? It doesn't seem like a huge tax bill to stay on top.
How about this? Nobody was good at their job in
Yeah,
this movie.
that's a good point.
My weak link, though, is wanted fugitives trying to sell out a benefit concert that they're headlighting. Just seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Let me raise awareness for this thing that the cops are immediately going to find out. It's a flaw in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's probably one too many antagonists. So my weak link is maybe we could have consolidated some of the various people
The Nazis,
chasing
the rednecks, and the
Carrie
cops.
Fisher and the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Could have made it just all three of them, redneck Nazi cops.
Carrie Fisher, Nazi cop.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be good.
What's age the worst? What you go? I have some.
Manual steering. You usually see these guys fishtailing around a lot, and it makes you appreciate,
Great take.
just responsive steering wheel. I tried once when I was in high school, like end of high school. I saw a 68 Mustang, being sold out of a garage in Vermont. And I got my dad to let me try and test drive it because it was only like $5,000. I'm sure it was an absolute lemon. But I got 10 feet before I was just like, why isn't, I don't know how do you get this thing to respond to anything?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's how cars used to be. You used to fucking turn it all the way to go 2 feet to the left.
Yeah. No Paul Schaefer in this movie. And there's a backstory to it where they have the Blues Brothers. They're about to film the movie. Lorne Michaels is doing this Gilda Live project with Gilda Radner, who's the other biggest star on the show. And Paul Schaefer is the one who's working on the concert album for it. Concert album's terrible. They're all upset about it. So they decided instead of trying to do it again, they're going to do a live Broadway show, and that will be the concert album. And they need Paul Schaefer for it.
Yep.
So Paul Schaefer tells Belushi, I'm out for the Blues Brothers movie. I can't do it. And Belushi flips out. It's like, you're out of the band.
You're dead.
Yeah, you're dead to me. And
SG style.
anyway,
I'll hit you with my
I can
car.
totally identify.
Yeah. I'll hit you with my blues mobile.
I'm gonna fishtail you into a lake.
But Paul Schaefer would have been like
He put the band
the
together.
Murph guy.
He landed on his feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it just would have been fun to
keyboardist.
have him in the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
He would have been the keyboardist. But he's he clearly with Aykroyd, they handpicked all the side guys.
It's sad that he's not in it, but it turned out fine.
Is it what's the worst? Is it Howard Shore being like, you guys should be the Blues Brothers, and then not being a part of this going forward?
Yeah, he did okay for himself
Yeah.
ultimately, but yeah.
I had for What's Age the Worst, I wanted more SNL cameos. I just feel like Bill Murray could have been in this. I feel like Steve Martin could have had a minute.
Yeah.
I think if they're doing that, knowing everything we learned in the 90s and 2000s, they would have probably
Lorraine Newman could have been.
Yeah,
Carrie
they
Fisher or
would. They
something.
just would have worked in a couple people.
Yeah. We love when Hartman shows up in So I Married an Ex-Murderer, right?
Right.
Everyone here calls me Vicky.
In prison parlance, that was his bitch. Blues Brothers 2000 I have as a What's Age the Worst. We've all agreed not to talk about it anymore. Here's a great story.
I gotta say, I don't know if I saw it.
It's a tough sit.
It's
Is
bad.
Yeah.
So the most powerful theater chain was Mann Theaters. Ted Mann was the guy that ran it. And Landis tells this whole story about, he basically said, I'm not booking this
I'm
film
gonna play
in
this in Compton.
no white neighborhoods at
Yeah.
all. This will not be in Brentwood. He
Why?
didn't want black patrons going there to see the film. He didn't think white people would want to go see a film that had all of these black musical stars in it. And the movie gets released and it has half as many theaters as it normally would have. And yet still did really well. But yeah, not great. That's a definition of a What's Age the Worst.
It's just dumb as hell too.
Yeah.
We're already coming off of Car Wash and movies like that obviously a lot of people went to go see. So I don't know.
But you have to think of the the era this was, when you think about who was on TV, who was in a movie, there were so few black stars. There was like real racism back then.
Of course.
So it makes sense that he was like, no, unless it's like a stir crazy type of movie with Pryor and Gene Wilder, like I'm not putting it in Brentwood.
Yeah, you could get it if it wasn't John Belushi and Dan
It's
Aykroyd.
nuts.
You know, it's not.
It definitely hurt the box office. The Ruffalo Hannah Rubinek Partridge Overacting Award. I have one candidate. I don't feel great about it, but did you have one?
I mean, it's blasphemy to say it, but it's Aretha Franklin talking about blasphemy. Like her one like hammer
Oh, that's
line.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Don't you blaspheme in here?
I think the entire band is a little over their skis here.
But they're not
that's
overacting.
underacting.
They're,
Yeah,
they're,
yeah.
like, they're not acting.
I guess they're. I guess so.
Matt Guitar Murphy. Sean's choice flex category. What do you got?
I already fired off my Playboy magazine poster for the Criteria Orgasm, which I just, I'm happy to share another Criteria Orgasm here on the show. I'm
do you
really
have one?
honored.
Oh yeah.
I just had one. How did it look?
It was typical of a Criteria Orgasm.
I was
think.
quaking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just can't. I couldn't believe that poster was on that wall in Elwood's house.
The CR thinks Luke Wilson could have been Harrison Ford Hottest Take Award. I have a good one.
I think that Belushi's cocaine problem and Aykroyd's script probably led this production into disarray, but I wonder whether this would have come in under budget if they just cut the Carrie Fisher plot, which does not really have a whole lot to do with like anything. It's just like this chick chasing John Belushi for like one joke in a tunnel at the end.
I love having her in the movie.
It's
Though.
it's great, and it actually does. It basically serves as like a transition for each part of the film where she blows something up so that they can go off to do something else. But yeah.
There's some holes, and Juliet Jake and this lady who owned a beauty salon apparently were engaged for 3 years. And then, showed the wedding. And it's hard to imagine Jake being engaged to anything or anyone.
Yeah.
Did you have a hottest take?
Carrie Fisher dating Aykroyd at the time.
Right? One of the many people he was like engaged to.
The sequel invalidates this movie standing as the greatest SNL related movie of all time because Wayne's World 2 is solid and Wayne's World is great.
Okay.
That's my hot take. And honestly, MacGruber's in the conversation, in my opinion.
Wow. MacGruber!
Would you ever do MacGruber?
Yeah. It's on the list. My hottest take. Cocaine continues to be underrated. This is a great era.
In what specific ways?
But you don't know, okay, go ahead.
Some of the stuff in the 70s and 80s is just
cocaine
so
is overrated?
Underrated.
Underrated, okay.
As a creative / cultural force that wreaks so much havoc and ruined lives and careers and killed people and all that stuff. It led to some fucking crazy great shit like this movie that I just don't think is made if everyone wasn't on cocaine.
Right.
They're just like, yeah, let's have Carrie Fisher. Oh, do you know her? Yeah, I'll write in a part where it's Jake's crazy girlfriend and he's just shooting grenade launchers at him. And like, this would just never happen in any other window than 1978 to 1986.
Do you regret not having a cocaine era?
Me personally, I think it would have been bad.
How
I can barely handle Vegas.
How good would your columns have
can you
been?
Imagine your draft diaries?
Up until 5 a.m.
I would have been like fucking Taylor Sheridan, just cranking out 9,000 words a day. No, but it led to movies and TV shows and choices.
Yeah.
That would just be inconceivable unless everybody around you was on cocaine.
You should just get into it now.
That would
like,
be
what do you
funny.
have to lose?
When you're an empty nester.
But nobody knew any better. And back then, it was like if we thought coffee was cocaine.
Yeah.
We're like, oh man, Sean's had 2 coffees.
A little concerning for me. Sir, I'm sorry, but you've been using coffee your entire life?
Casting what ifs. Tough to find good ones. The only one they wanted Olivia Newton-John to be either Twiggy or I think the Twiggy part, but she was unavailable because she was working on Xanadu. Tough beat.
Yeah. Right after Grease.
Yikes. And then
so the idea with Twiggy is like just we're gonna get Elwood a love interest, right?
Guess so.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what the equivalent now of Twiggy is. It's like a Kardashian, not even like Kim. It's like having like Kylie Jenner. In
like a
the movie.
professionally
girl, right?
famous cute girl.
It was an it girl from like 7-8 years ago who wasn't even really totally an it girl anymore.
I think it's more like an
Julia
Addison
Fox?
Rae type or
Oh, okay.
something, like a TikTok star.
Did you see Julia Fox made it onto the Charlie XCX
I did.
performance at the
It was her
Grammys?
birthday.
Yeah,
I learned on
that's
that
cool.
telecast. Yeah.
The studio wanted younger acts. They weren't happy with Aretha and Ray Charles and James Brown, and we're trying to get Rose Royce from Car Wash to get in there.
Seems kind of like, didn't you guys know what you were buying? You know,
Yeah.
of all the things that I think went wrong, it's in the title.
Best that guy. Charles Napier doesn't count, I don't think, because he's Charles Napier.
This would be his third or fourth victory of that guy.
I think when you win 3 times, you're not allowed to win
I was
anymore.
like retired.
But
Yeah.
he does have
Okay.
the same scream that he does when Lecter's coming at him.
Ah!
When the cars, when the giant Winnebago's about to go in the water, if you
good.
look in the driver's seat, it's like, ah! And
that
then
scene is so needlessly complicated by like the
Yeah.
whole union thing, where it's like, have you like paid your union dues?
Right.
Like that whole layer to it.
Henry Gibson of that guy or no?
I
That's who I had.
If you're a movie fan, like a hardcore movie fan,
You know
he's
it's Henry
not,
Gibson.
But
Well-
I think he's probably a that guy.
I have an incredible that guy for this.
Go for it.
The young kid who tries to steal from Ray's guitar shop.
Oh yeah.
Who's that?
He grew up 8 years later, was the chauffeur in Die Hard.
Oh,
Deveray,
what?
whatever his name is. Yeah.
No way.
I recognized his face and I was
Argyle?
like, I've seen that guy. And then, yeah, it's the Die Hard
Oh my
chauffeur.
god, dude.
It's
Yeah.
a great one.
What a fucking combo for that guy. I don't know if
It's a great CV.
a lot of great things have happened in his life.
Okay,
since
that's not
then.
good.
Well, he
I
was
think
in
he's
Blues
had some
Brothers and
issues.
Die Hard.
Yeah.
There you go.
I had Kathleen Freeman.
It's the Penguin.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like she's been in a ton of stuff.
Well, she's also eligible for the Deion Waiters Award, along with James Brown, Aretha Franklin, Carrie Fisher, Steve Lawrence, John Candy, probably a bunch of other people we could mention. Who do you got, CR?
Spielberg in this?
He can be in it.
I have an Aretha Franklin Ray Charles tie.
Is Henry Gibson in it too much?
Yeah, he's in a little
Okay.
too much.
Because he's going for it
Yeah.
in a big way.
I think Aretha and Ray Charles just deliver. You know, like you're like, wow.
Paul Rubens as the waiter.
That's a great
He's barely in it though.
He gets one scene, but he communicates the entire Paul Rubens experience that we will soon be getting in America.
I would go Aretha Franklin. Recasting couch director City, just Paul Schaefer, just CGI him in here as the band later. Let's figure out how to do this.
Can I
45 years later.
can I do a recasting director idea?
Yeah.
I think if John Landis directs 1941 and Steven Spielberg directs The Blues Brothers, they're both better.
That would have been a good hottest
But this
take,
is
too.
actually my possibly unanswerable question: is if Spielberg directs 1941 and goes right into Blues Brothers, and Blues Brothers goes out of control, does he ever direct Raiders?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably
Does
not.
he ever direct Poltergeist?
Well, I mean, how
A
dare
little
you?
inside
I like
Rewatchables
that.
please,
joke.
please respect Toby Hooper, please.
Half-assed earned research. They
So
used
much.
13 different Bluesmobiles cars that were all bought at an auction. And then 60 other police cars cost $400 each. They had 40 stunt drivers. They had over 500 extras for the next to last $3.5 million scene in Daly Center. The final chase scene, they dropped a Ford Pinto from a helicopter at an altitude of 1,200 feet.
It's amazing.
And the FAA had to give them a special certificate to be able to do it. It's just, again, back to my cocaine theory. This just doesn't happen in any other decade.
The FAA is on cocaine. They're like, great idea. Let's do it.
This was a time too when directors were like, I don't care, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And you couldn't stop them somehow.
Yeah.
Like they would just spend and you couldn't stop them.
Well, think about it. There's no texting, emails, cell
Mhm.
phones. So you could just lose communication with somebody for
Well, also
18
every
hours.
day, my favorite piece of research, and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff comes from this Vanity Fair article that was written about the making of the movie. But the chain of screaming that would happen every day when Lou Wasserman would wake up and find out what he spent the day before on Blues Brothers.
Yeah.
And then he would call Ned Tannen and yell at him. And then Ned Tannen would call Sean Daniels and yell at him. And then they would call Landis and yell at him. And then finally it would be like down to Aykroyd, who was responsible for getting Belushi to get to the set every day.
So I read the Bob Woodward Wired, all the Blues Brothers parts.
Very
Which-
controversial book.
Yeah. The SNL people were all like really upset about it because they were working on the SNL book by Hill and Weingrad about the first 10 years. And they were like 80% through it. And then Wired came out and was just like a Belushi cocaine hatchet job book. Although it's not as bad as I think it was represented, but it definitely dwells on the drug stuff. But there's a lot of Blues Brothers stuff in that. And the Vanity Fair thing was basically a lot of that rehashing Wired. But that's a fun reread. Because it's just like, we're on the set and then Belushi disappeared. And then we had to go find him and he was doing this.
Turns up he was like at this guy's house.
Yeah.
Like 2 miles away.
It's like you almost could have made a movie about Belushi making this movie. Could have been the movie.
Don't give anybody any ideas.
Yeah, seriously. They destroyed 103 cars, which was a record. Matrix Reloaded in 2003. Wrecked 300 cars. Broke it. There's a whole thing about how Belushi got hurt on a skateboard near the end, and Lou Wasserman had to get the city's top orthopedic surgeon. Maybe this would be in the movie.
That would be
Belushi
amazing.
making...
He basically like patches together his knee enough to hold up for the end of the film shoot.
Yeah.
The guy had just like worked on Mitch Kupchak or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
What would the movie be called? Would it be like Singing the Blues? You know, like what's
just
the
blues.
Yeah.
Blues? Yeah, that's good.
It would be a movie that just made people mad, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So they filmed the big musical numbers was at the Hollywood Palladium, but they made it seem like it was Chicago. And then
You know, one thing to add about that, the crowds are just great. You know, like in some movies you're watching, like these crowds are not
really
selling
authentic.
it.
Yeah.
But they're really selling how much they love Jake and Elwood in those sequences. People are standing
the
up.
only
they're
thing I don't
dancing.
like is that they weren't into it the beginning of the
they
first
no-sold
song.
it
Yeah.
at the
They
beginning.
kind of no
It's like
sold
you guys
it.
came all the way out here. It's
Yeah.
$2.
You
What
weren't-
the hell?
You weren't excited at all. Dan Aykroyd said many theaters in the American South refused to show the film because there are too many blacks in it, and that it would have done better if not for the racism in the American South.
Okay.
And then Elwood, his data readout, I freeze framed it. 116 parking violations and 56 moving violations. And then it said arrest driver and pound
the
vehicle.
car.
56 moving violations is a lot.
Yeah.
I don't even think I had that in college.
How
Yeah,
many
like-
moving violations were you ever carrying at once?
I mean, I almost lost my license.
Speeding?
It was like a point system,
Yeah.
and I had to go, and I was going to be at 10 points.
Mhm.
So I had to go fight the ticket, and I had to drive to like freaking Middle Connecticut somewhere.
Did you
And the
represent
cop-
yourself in court?
Yeah, I was gonna say they had like a faulty radar thing, and
I'm out of order. You're out of order.
the cop didn't show up. Cop had like something and didn't show up,
Well,
and I
maybe
would have
he
lost
just
my license for my whole junior year.
Yeah. Maybe he recognized a future takesman
Yeah.
in you and he didn't want to
So
take
you're
away.
saying he was a coward, that man,
Yeah.
who wouldn't show up.
He wasn't expecting it.
You've been in a car with Bill. What do you think of that?
I mean, I find the seatbelt thing distracting. But I think you're a pretty good driver.
Your eyes just went very wide.
I think you're a really good
329
driver.
from Vegas to
3
Burbank.
hours and
Yeah.
29 seconds.
We're speed brothers.
3 hours 29
it
minutes.
really
Vegas
matters
to
us
Burbank.
how
Dropping off
fast.
Corolla at his house.
yeah, but you
Yeah.
wear a seatbelt.
I do wear a
Yeah,
seatbelt.
and
I do.
he's a big hangs a U-turn in the middle of Wilshire guy. Or he
BS.
was.
Yeah.
Like
Listen, there's two ways to drive. Either you're a coward or you're the
Sure.
Yeah.
you're the king of the jungle.
Busy living or busy dying.
Apex Mountain. Belushi's an interesting one. I think it's probably 78 Animal House, SNL when he's still on there. The combo of that would be my official opinion.
I think you're probably right. I do love the idea of him being both Apex Mountain, like it's like not only his movie stardom, but his like city stardom.
Yeah.
Like, is this Apex Mountain of a famous person in Chicago?
How
or
about a famous person in any city?
is it Michael Jordan? You know, like, yeah.
Ooh.
But Belushi was like a man of the people, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure like everybody who was
Well,
in
Michael
Chicago.
Jordan's Steakhouse is open to the public,
Yeah,
you know?
he's sitting in the back. I'm sure Belushi from 75 to 81 in Chicago, probably everyone who lived there probably has one Belushi story, but
Yeah.
would be my
Yeah.
guess.
Like you said, he never carried a wallet. He ate for free. He drank for free every day.
It's like Dave Jacoby. Aykroyd, I'm going to say no.
I think Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Is this Apex Mountain for getting your personal belongings back after leaving prison?
For that scene?
Just
Yeah.
the only other one that matches this is Rounders
Oh, yeah.
when Worm gets his toothpick.
There's another famous one though. I was reading about it. What is the other famous one?
Is it 48 hours? Or does he? I don't think he gets anything special back.
So CR, when Red Art, yeah, he gets his suit back though.
He gets the suit back.
The
but
suit was $957 and I wore the shit in.
Yes. There's like this kind of set the template for that move.
So when we read our heist movie,
yeah.
we have a scene where they get their stuff back in
And
the
it's
beginning.
like, here you go. You know, it's like
Pack of Marlboro Lights.
Yeah.
your FanDuel account.
Yeah. One soiled condom.
one used prophylactic.
Yeah.
One same game parlay.
Yeah.
Chicago is a movie locale.
No.
Probably Ferris, right?
Yeah. I would say
That's got to
Ferris.
be the greatest scene ever filmed in Chicago.
I love Thief.
Well, but that's like a different.
I know.
That's not the answer.
It's my emotional apex.
It's either Ferris or Fugitive.
Were you on the Thief rewatchables?
I was, and I was
good.
so happy. It's one of my favorite episodes of all time.
That was a pandemic era one.
That's, let's get on with this big romance.
Oh, that's right. You did your whole
That's
thing
my
about the
favorite
diner date.
con
Yeah,
is
yeah.
That's the best. That's
As
like
you
one
know,
of the
I
best
don't
scenes
remember
ever.
anything after the vaccine.
Yeah, no, I love Thief.
The Blues. I'm going to say no.
Probably not.
Bushy sideburns.
Ooh. I think Elvis in Vegas.
Okay. Carrie Fisher. This comes out same day as Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I guess this
Pretty
is
good day for
yeah.
her.
Wow.
Not bad.
Good
She gets
call.
a little bit marginalized to Empire, I think, right? It's more Luke's story.
Yeah. Yes.
I think Jedi is like her real, like, she chokes out Jabba, you know?
Right. She's sex slave in Jedi.
Have you seen Return of the Jedi?
I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Have you
Is that
seen
the
it
last
since
time
then?
you saw it?
Probably. I remember being pleased.
You
I
remember
thought-
being pleased.
I thought Jedi was my favorite of the three.
Big Ewok
that's
guy.
a classic Bill
Yeah.
take right there. Come on. Jedi,
I remember having a
the
good time.
favorite of the three.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Well, I remember I really liked Han Solo and Chewbacca.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I felt like they really got to cook in the third one.
Yeah.
was my
The
memory.
original Blues
Yeah.
Brothers.
Kind of
Yeah.
the Mikhail and Parrish of the Star
Little
Wars
bit, little
universe.
bit.
Yeah.
J.C. Penney's. Has it ever gotten better than those guys going through the window
it's
at a
definitely
J.C.
Apex
Penney's?
for Pier 1, right?
Yeah, probably. These are stores that it was right around their apex anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
But to have it called out by Jake and Elwood. Oh, Pier 1.
Imprinted on you.
Yeah.
Now you shop there to this day.
Illinois Nazis, I think definitely. The theme song from Rawhide, I'm going to say no.
Probably the height of Rawhide as a television show.
Yeah.
Orange Whips. What is an Orange Whip, CR?
I don't know.
Three of them.
I think it's like a Dole Whip in that it's like a kind of somewhere between an ice cream and a drink.
It's like an Orange Julius, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cocaine.
I think cocaine's had some big moments. I think Scarface is honestly like
It's a good
cocaine's
one.
Apex Mountain.
Yeah. I
film.
think a lot of just Richard Pryor in the 70s is kind of in the conversation.
It's a tough one. Because it has to be like a positive Apex Mountain. It can't be like this person died doing cocaine.
But
it's
like-
more like,
Live on the Sunset Strip, this Richard Pryor is like him talking about being on cocaine,
Yeah.
right? And getting high and then what he did to himself.
might be like a Michael Ray Richardson triple double in like 1979.
Sure.
Like a 29, 17, 14. The new Oldsmobile is definitely Apex Mountain.
Absolutely.
They came out early. James Brown, no.
No.
Horrible Apartments, probably there's been worse.
Has there been a worse apartment than Elwood's apartment that was next to the L?
My least favorite apartment ever in a movie is the 7 one where the person was being starved to death.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
number one.
Sloth?
Yeah.
No.
That's the one you don't want to rent right after.
Is it Sloth? It is Sloth.
Yeah, that's why.
Tough beat for the next tenant.
Dicks! McKinley.
You know, we did Silence as basically a comedy.
Should we do
You're-
7 as a
Is
comedy?
7 ready to just have fun with that?
I'm so in.
What's in the box?
The Re-7, a
Yeah.
laugh riot. Yeah.
Detectives!
Blues Brothers as a band. I'm going to say yes.
This is their apex over going platinum
Is that
or on SNL.
what was that one called? Briefcase full of blues?
Yeah,
Or-
it sold 4 million albums, which is pretty nuts. It's a lot of
Crazy.
albums. Vengeful Ex-Girlfriends, no. John Landis, no.
What is
I had
what is
Checking Out of
Apex Mountain
Prison.
for Vengeful Ex-Girlfriends? Just out of curiosity.
Fatal Attraction. I will not be ignored.
Is Coming to America Landis's Apex Mountain?
I think so.
It's a tricky
Unless you
one.
want to
But
go.
that's post Twilight Zone, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
yes.
no, it's probably Animal House.
Is it an Animal House?
Yeah, that thing was
All
a
three of
phenomenon.
them are in a similar range box office wise.
Cruiser Hanks.
Why not both?
No, that you can't.
That was my answer too. Cruise
No,
and Hanks.
don't be cowards.
Then Hanks says Elwood.
Hanks says Elwood's the answer.
Okay. I won't argue.
Scorsese or Spielberg? Clearly Spielberg.
Wait a minute, hold on. But we know Cruise knows how to do a back handspring because of the firm, just like Jake does in the movie.
Cruise
Are we
is
sure?
Jake? No, it has to be Hanks.
Can you imagine Cruise being like, how much for the women?
Yeah, how much for the little girl? Spielberg versus Scorsese.
Yeah,
Although Scorsese's version of Scorsese gets to make the making of the
in
movie. Yeah,
if he makes it. Yeah.
he makes blues.
Doing the
Yeah.
like you could see that.
Jennifer Roulette, Aniston, Coolidge, Connolly, Garner, Lawrence, or Lopez for the Carrie Fisher part. I had Lawrence.
I had 4 question marks. I'm not sure that any of these women make sense in this movie.
I like the idea of
I'm
like
not sure I like the category,
Younger
but
Lopez
trying it
as
out.
Carrie Fisher is pretty cool.
Oh,
Jennifer Coolidge as the Penguin.
Oh, Jennifer Coolidge is the
Oh, that's
Penguin's
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Coolidge wins that one.
Did you skip calling Rosillo? Are you backing away from that idea?
No, I'll call him right now.
All right.
I received a text from a friend today who said the most exciting moment in podcast listening he's had this year is hearing that we were going to call Ryan for On Before Sunrise. And he was at the edge of his seat.
He's gonna think it's because Durant got traded.
Your call has been.
Ryan,
Jesus.
come on, buddy.
Damn.
At the tone, please.
Oh for 2.
At least hit us with a, hey, you've reached Ryan. Not here right now.
I'll
Grinding
keep the
tape.
phone on
Because
in
he was
case-
like, you called right before.
Yeah.
Son of a...
What role would Philip Seymour Hoffman have played in the movie?
The John Candy role.
That's what I was gonna
that
say.
as well.
Yeah. Burton Mercer.
The Ed Norton Reverse Dunk Award. Did this movie need a random sports scene?
I think that there's a even more coked out version of this where the 1980 Cubs come into play here. They are like we get it. Is Ron Say on that team? Like what are we talking about? in
This is
1980?
the height of Walter Payton. Where is Walter Payton?
Well, it's summer, right?
Those are both noble answers, guys, but you're both wrong.
Okay.
It's a pickup hoops basketball scene where he goes to find one of the band members because they're playing in a game.
Okay.
And who's in
it's
it?
there's cameos from like Mark Aguirre, Magic Johnson are in
Isaiah.
the game, and we're
Yeah.
just
Who's
like,
on the 80
that's how-
Bulls?
He's just saying local.
I'm
Chicago
saying like we
players.
use local Chicago dudes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Chicago guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that's how
Okay.
we get it.
Oh.
Picking nits. I have a million, so I'll let you guys go.
It's more just like of a general comment, which this is a movie where if you subtract certain elements from it, there's no movie. If you took out the car chases and the music,
Mhm.
this would be like a 42-minute movie, which is fine. I love
Yeah.
love this movie, but it's just a note that there's not really much of like a plot.
Yeah, I have some.
Took a cheeseburger out of a bun. It's not a
Just-
fucking cheeseburger.
Wow.
It's called Pickin' Nits. Not,
Jesus.
I have some just questions about the money in general. So Ray lets them take out $1,400 in musical instruments on an
More,
IOU.
right?
Well, they say $1,400 is what they would return out of the $10,000, and $1,400 in 1980 is roughly like $100,000 right now. So he gave them a $100,000 IOU. I don't know if my conversion may be off. Let's just say for the sake of conversation, it's $50,000.
Yeah.
He let them walk out with $50,000.
It's a good friend.
That's not ideal. On top of that, $5,000 in back taxes, or the IRS is going to close an orphanage.
That was my biggest one.
What?
It's a church-owned orphanage that has to pay a property tax bill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it's tax exempt. The
I think
orphanage.
so. I think so.
I
So
guess
to
if
premise
they're-
the whole movie on this, we could have done a little better.
How did nobody get run over in the mall as a picking nit?
Yeah.
Mm.
How
It's
did
like
nobody
400
die in any
people
of
in there.
Carrie Fisher's?
But the way that they did it is great because that was a mall that was closed, then never reopened, where they shot. The Dixie Square Mall had been
Oh.
closed for 2 years, and they shot it in there while it was closed fully.
But it had
Oh,
extras in
interesting.
there, yeah.
So it was, but yeah, they
I'm
had
saying
extras
in
there.
real life,
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
making this movie, somebody gets hit. How did Carrie Fisher's character get a rocket launcher? Could you just buy one of
80s,
those in
man.
79?
Yeah, get out
Iran
the Libyans.
Contra, let's go.
Yeah, get Gaddafi.
Ready for that one.
This is my wife who watched the middle half of the movie with me and then went to go watch Below Deck. The Soul Food Cafe, she felt like had 40 health violations.
Yeah.
Mm.
It was disgusting.
Also, Matt Guitar Murphy, as soon as he finds out Jake and Elwood are there, just leaves a live grill going. It's like Jake
Yeah.
Elwood.
And a wife and
Yeah.
a business.
Saxophonist standing on the countertop. Not what you want.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest nitpick in this whole movie, what happened to the good old boys? Why were they so late? They had a gig. They just showed up at the end. Everybody at the bar is gone. They're like, we're the good old boys. We're here. It's like, yeah, you guys are 4 hours late. You
Probably a lot
fuckheads.
of road closures because of all the car chases that have been happening. So just traffic was a bitch.
Yeah.
How did the band drink $200 worth of beer at Bob's Country Bunker? It's a lot. In 1980,
Yeah, beers are like a buck.
50 cents.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
It's 9 guys in the band.
They had 400 beers.
That's like Wade Boggs numbers. Yeah.
Is Twiggy really just like, I'm going to wait at this motel for that weird guy who smells that
That I gave $94 to?
that I
Elwood,
paid
he had a
$94.
magnetism, you know? He had game.
There's a nighttime daylight thing that's a little dubious in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
They escape after the concert, probably 11 o'clock,
Okay.
10:30.
And-
Concert started like 8, maybe let's say 9:30. And they're on chase and they're in Chicago. They weren't that far away
They're
from
like
Chicago
2
to
hours
begin
from
with.
Chicago. Yeah.
Okay.
But now it's the morning and people are at work at 9 o'clock. So there's 11 hours unaccounted for. Again, cocaine.
yeah.
hell of a drug.
Continuity
Yeah,
errors.
that's how you lose 11 hours.
Yeah.
Sequel, prequel, prestige, TV, all black cast, or untouchable. Untouchable.
Well, unfortunately, there was a sequel. So,
Or there wasn't.
okay.
You could apply Fletch 2 Rocky 5 rules and just live your life like it never happened.
That's good.
Is this movie better with Wayne Jenkins, Danny Trejo, Doris Burke, Sam Jackson, Nell, Byron Mayo, Barney Cousins, Tony Romo, Harley Mays, Chris Collinsworth, Daniel Plainview, Longlegs, or Wilford Brimley in The Firm?
I was thinking that it would be amazing if Daniel Plainview was the third Blues brother and introduced them at the Palace Hotel. It was like, we're so glad to see many of you lovely people here tonight, and we would especially like to welcome all the representatives of Illinois' law enforcement community that have chosen to join us here in the Palace Hotel ballroom.
You, me, them, everybody.
Let's sing the blues. I had Romo
hmm
during basically any car chase. The Nazis are falling, Jim. They're not going to make it. They're falling about 130 stories, Jim.
The same energy that he brought to Mark Andrews dropping that pass.
Oh, Mike, this is just a woman scorned with a heat-seeking missile launcher. You can get those from
Mike.
Gaddafi any way you want, man.
Like, she's got to move on. She's just got to, I know it was 3 years and left her at the altar, but come on. Just one Oscar. Who gets it? The soundtrack? Aykroyd?
I say Belushi.
Belushi? Best
mean,
actor?
It just nobody can do what he can do.
I was
Only
going
he
to
can
say
do what he can do.
Aykroyd for not screenplay.
For story.
Yeah, for inspiration.
Yeah.
Was best movie that only makes sense if you know that cocaine was involved in Oscar category?
They
or
should
no?
add that.
That should be a Rewatchables category. Does cocaine make this movie make more sense?
So the 81 Oscars, De Niro wins for Raging Bull, Duvall, Great Santini, John Hurt, The Elephant Man, Peter O'Toole, The Stuntman, maybe Belushi bumps Jack Lemmon in tribute.
Ooh, I've not seen that.
I don't think I've ever seen Tribute. Otherwise, I don't know if Belushi's
Oscars.
getting in that
Yeah, I
lane.
don't think
Probably
it's
not
up there.
getting past
De Niro.
Bobby D on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably unanswerable questions. The owner from Bob's Country Bunker just is now in a jihad trying to find Jake and Elwood. Like he just closed down his business. What happened?
For $200.
Yeah.
Was anyone working there?
I just think he hates being made a fool of. Yeah.
That's it. He's
got a
just
lot of
going to
pride.
follow this guy all around. Why was Bob's Country Bunker so close to Chicago and Illinois when it seems like it's in like Arkansas?
It's like kind of in Indiana.
Is that what it is?
I think so. Because Indiana, like, it doesn't take long to get from Chicago to Indiana. Then once you're in Indiana, you can get to some country bunkers pretty fast.
I have one more. Did they ever think of just having characters do cocaine in these movies when the movie is so clearly fueled by cocaine?
It's funny. There's not a lot of
It's
cocaine
always-
use in the 70s in
Yeah.
movies.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's a good point. The 80s
Only
and
like-
the 90s, it changes.
Only like in Cruising.
That's like only when Scorsese gets to Last Temptation of Christ.
Right.
And he's got
Yeah.
Judas
Looking backwards.
Yeah,
Giuliani.
it's just
Well,
lots of
Cruising,
blow,
what does he
lot
do
of
in the
baggies.
handkerchief?
He's doing like formaldehyde or like he's doing like uppers or something. Sniffers.
Re-cruising?
I'm in. I'm there.
I have an
Coming out on
unanswerable question.
Blu-ray soon. 4K, Blu-ray.
Yeah, 4K.
It's like $70.
Yeah, thank you, Arrow. Thank you for all your work that you're doing.
$70. Who's
Yeah.
buying Cruising?
Not you, but you're gonna wait till it's 35.
Oh wait, there was a Total Recall was $10 the other day. I was like, all right, I'll take that down.
That's worth
Cocaine
it. That's
Bill
worth
buying
it.
full price DVDs. That's a documentary I would watch.
Yeah,
That's what
Yeah.
if I was doing cocaine, that's the kind of stuff I'd do. I'd be like, oh my god,
You should get
all the Hitchcocks.
You should get a you should get a GoPro, but only put it on when you start surfing for Blu-rays. You know, when you're just like, do I add it to the cart? Do I not add it? Is $49.99 too much for me?
They had Eternal Sunshine was on, and I almost bought it, even though I don't really like
You
the
don't
movie.
like that.
Yeah,
See,
no.
this is
So I
what
was like,
happens.
This is gonna be
I
like you're
didn't
gonna
do
have
it.
Lebowski and you're
No,
like,
no,
I've
no.
never seen it. Yeah.
No, I'm not crossing that line.
This is Bill. Bill is one of the great collectors, and I knew this would happen one day.
What piece of memorabilia would you want?
Wait, I have one more
I
unanswerable
have- I
question.
Oh, go.
How bad did these guys smell?
Oh, Jesus.
That's a really
There's
good one.
not a shower in sight. He gets out of Joliet. He's wearing the same clothes he wore going in. The guys at Shea, the family at Shea Paul is like, they smell. We want them moved.
Yeah.
In 1980, can you imagine how bad, when you still had smoking sections in restaurants,
Mhm.
Yeah.
how bad somebody has to smell to ask them to move?
I think it. Well,
In sewers,
were
in
we more
explosions?
okay with people's body odor
'Cause of
40
smoking.
years ago?
Good question. I talk about this with my wife a lot when
Okay.
we watch like 1883 and 1923, and we
Mhm.
just watched American Primeval.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of like the odors as somebody who, has bad eyesight. So I have a super nose.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I just
Spider-Man.
my wife said the odors are just so bad all the time that eventually your brain kind of phases it out. It's like if you hear a loud noise all the time, you don't hear the noise the same way.
Yeah,
And that's what it is.
Yeah, I think
You
You
become
become
inured to it.
overpowered.
Yeah.
Your brain like is able to shut off that scent.
in the Westerns, it's like there's no indoor plumbing. So you have to imagine like anywhere where there are people, it's pretty bad. Right? You know,
The only way to compare anything to it now is the smell of a hockey locker room. That's it. That's how if you want to know what the 1880s were like,
It's pretty rough.
just going to like after a triple OT game in a hockey
Yeah.
locker room.
My nephews play hockey. It's not ideal.
Wrestling's up there too, I think.
Why is the guy who invented deodorant not more of a saint?
A hero?
Yeah. Why
But
is he not someone
but way
whose
back
name we
when-
know? Or the woman. Maybe it was a woman.
But way back when they kind of liked malodorousness.
A musk. They like the man musk.
Like there was that famous story about Napoleon telling his girlfriend or his wife, like, I'll be home in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Don't wash.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's how you are.
But that was supposed to be like a kink. He's like, don't even bother getting clean for me because I'm about to kick Rush's ass. And they didn't come home.
It's a tough beat.
Yeah. With the elbow.
Probably unanswerable. To the point about the poster, does this take place in the same universe as Apocalypse Now, this movie? Like, is there a...
Oh, it's like Captain
Is there a
Willard
Colonel
maybe
Kurtz?
going to see the good old boys
Yeah.
when he gets back from
Yeah.
Nam.
Did he have a copy of Briefcase
What
Full
a
of
sequel
Blues?
that would be.
Yeah. Could be.
It's like, oh, I didn't realize Elwood and Jake are playing.
Yeah.
That would be fun. How many of these movies would Belushi have made if he'd lived?
So this is the question. I was curious about this as well. Is do you think that he keeps making reliably like blockbuster comedies, or do you think he starts really pushing out his boat to do drama and stuff?
He's one of those I want to be treated as a real actor people.
Mm.
So all bets are off with that. But it's possible, like that America's Guest thing you mentioned earlier, it's possible that they're doing cocaine one night and they're just like, I wrote this script called America's Guest. And all of a sudden they're making it. Because I really think that's what the early 80s were like. I just think like somebody had an idea, they had a typewriter, they're just like typing it out for 8 days at the Chateau Marmont,
Yeah.
and then they're making a movie.
I had one more unanswerable, but just curious about, do you think this is the reason why like Lorne became more hands-on with people's adaptations of SNL stuff? It's because he wasn't really a part of this, right? And kind of turned it, didn't,
He wasn't, but I could be wrong about this. You're more of an expert on this sort of thing, but when he came back to the show, I think he put some things into his deal that anything that was an SNL produced movie would be part of the Universal agreement
Yeah.
that they made, and Broadway Video would participate, and it would all be licensed through the show. Whereas this was not.
yeah.
Yeah, and also he had been on the show longer, and I think by the 90s, people were more scared of him.
Okay.
So there was like the famous story of when Conan did the Tonight Show, when he took it over, and he didn't kind of bring Lorne into it. and then Lorne couldn't protect them. Lorne's like a fucking mafia boss.
Yeah.
So then Leno was able to do the shit he did that if Lorne had been involved in the show, they're never fucking with Lorne.
Right. He could have been the shield.
So I don't think he had that kind of power in 1980.
Right.
You read all the stuff you read from the late 70s is just him realizing like, oh God, like you're just, once these people hit a certain point, they're just going to leave or I'm going to lose them. And loyalty doesn't matter, the whole thing.
Yeah.
What piece of memorabilia would you want or not want from this movie?
When I went to the Blues Brothers 2000 premiere, they gave everybody a hat and Ray-Bans. And everybody wore them and looked ridiculous. And I did. And there's a photo of me wearing them.
No,
And I look
that sounds great.
So stupid. But, you know, Elwood and Jake's hat and Ray-Bans would be a sick item of movie memorabilia.
So I researched this, and apparently Belushi lost like 500 Ray-Bans during the filming. So there's just no way to even know.
Yeah. There's no
I think
original.
the Aykroyd, the briefcase that Elwood had, I think
good one.
seems reasonable. The car, the broken down car after the fact,
Yeah.
I think could be cool.
Yeah.
But I think the answer is probably the poster, the Colleen Camp poster, just because of the
A lot of history there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you basically would
It's
try
great
to get
crank
that
material
one
for you.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Captain Willard cranking it to Colin Camp.
Or the harmonica would be another good one. Like the
that's good.
harmonica they use in the big scene. Coach Finstock, the word, best life lesson.
Sometimes you need a mission from God.
Yeah. Mission from God trumps everything else.
I got two.
Yeah.
One, pay your parking tickets. I
Yeah.
feel like they could have avoided a lot of problems if they'd done that. Two, I
Good
love
point.
that the sign in the prison at the end of the movie, it's never too late to mend. Yeah, that's
Oh.
what it says, like in the lettering
Huh.
above the prison. I feel like that's a good message to take away from this movie.
Don't leave your girlfriend at the altar.
Yeah, well, especially not if she's got an inroad to Gaddafi.
Yeah.
To get
Guns and Ammo magazine. Best double feature choice. Animal House?
I got a weird one.
Wayne's World?
Bertolucci's The Leopard.
Old girlfriends?
There's a,
Continental Divide?
Visconti, yeah.
there's a very a little known Walter Hill movie called Crossroads.
Not little known to this
Oh,
guy.
yeah, Ralph Macchio.
With
Yeah.
Ralph Macchio
Yeah.
and Joe Seneca
Yeah.
about Robert Johnson and the history of blues. That is a cool movie.
Yeah.
And that is like, that's a movie about the real blues. This
Oh.
is a movie about
Yeah.
modern blues.
My double feature would be The Commitments.
Oh, that's good.
That's
That's really
a
good.
group of Irish kids who started a 60s soul band.
The Zawatney Award for what happened the next day, from adding this in. How many years were Jake and Elwood in prison? What do we think?
He just did a 3-year bid.
So he's a recidivist.
So that's held against him. I think we're talking about 10 to 15 years here.
A lot of property destroyed. A lot of cop cars destroyed. Malls destroyed.
Multi-time offenders.
Does he save the orphanage, though?
You know, I think Blues Brothers 2000, doesn't it start with Jake getting out or with
No.
Elwood getting out?
That
But that would be
never
18
happened.
years.
doesn't matter.
The other thing I was thinking about last night is we are now further away from that movie than the sequel was from the original,
Oh my
which is
God.
like fucking devastating time-wise.
Well, we talked about Belushi movies he didn't make. He was supposed to be in Ghostbusters, which was the fork in the road with that movie. That was why
What was he going to play in Ghostbusters?
Aykroyd was writing that for the two of them.
So he was going to be like Venkman?
He was going to be the Bill Murray character, I think.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It's time to do Ghostbusters. It's time to do Ghostbusters.
We were supposed to do it last year, and I don't know what happened because it was the 40th anniversary last year.
I just watched it randomly last year, and I was like,
I
this
watched it on a
movie
plane
is sick.
the other month. I was like, this movie is perfect.
Well, it's
So
another
good.
movie that got really helped by the widescreen.
Yeah.
Because it had a really strange cable TV run
Now you
because
can
it
really
was the
see
way it was
Slimer.
shot.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Who won the movie? We never do two people for this, but I don't think it has to
It's
be
a duo.
Belushi and Aykroyd.
Yeah, it's Luca and LeBron.
Oh, God.
Luca and LeBron. It's Luca and a Miller Lite.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I agree. It's both of them.
All right. That's it for the pod. Thanks to Jack Sanders. We did not have producer Craig this week because as we're taping this, he is
At the Super Bowl.
at
Do we
the Super Bowl.
know if he has seen this?
Well, I think because he's obviously he is something of a huge SNL fan, he'll at least
Mhm.
respect it. But I think he might find it a little bit dull.
Got some great emails. I'm not sure when we're doing the next mailbag, but got some really good ones at the rewatchables33@gmail.com. You can also watch the Ringer Movies YouTube channel where we put up, Oscars are coming.
Soon, less
Yeah.
than a month.
You gotta tell me what to bet soon.
I don't fucking know. That's part of what makes this a fun one. It's a lot harder to make picks this year.
Fun one or not fun at all? It's one or the other.
Well, I would say the scandals are a little unpleasant. The movies are okay, but not knowing is exciting.
It's time for the Zag King to put all his money on
Zag.
Carla Sofia.
I'll never top. What was the movie in Gloucester 2 years ago? We hit that
Coda?
14
You
to
hit
1.
Coda hard. That was
Coda
maestro
was-
work from you.
Yeah, but there's no Coda this year where you'd be like, oh, that one's gonna win.
Well, to me right now, it's a complete unknown. Which
The
is
Dylan movie.
a movie that everybody likes, even if they don't love it, and has no scandal attached to it whatsoever, and has been a box office success.
Man,
Just
that's hard for me to believe that would win the best.
You can
Oscar.
still get good odds on that movie right now. You can't
Really?
get good odds on the other top three.
You think it's going to be helped by preferential choice
Yeah.
voting?
A lot of people may have it at 2, 3, 4, maybe not as many at 1, but that's what matters this year.
Oh, that's right. So you can just be like third, fourth. God, imagine if sports worked that way. That'd be so stupid. CR, thank you. Fennessey, thank you. See you next week.